Hello and welcome to another lecture. So today we want to talk about supply chain drivers and metrics. In this chapter, we will talk about major drivers of supply chains, including facilities, inventory, transportation, information sourcing, and pricing. We will also talk about their strategic role in achieving competitive edge for supply chains and the organizations. And also we will talk about some trade-offs of all these drivers and how it is possible to consider a balanced approach when it comes to work with them. So let's start with the big picture. So if you remember in the past lecture, we talked about what customers value in a business, in a supply chain, and trying to make sure that the supply chain can offer that to the customers. For example, some might value having access to a variety of products, some might value the lower price, some might value the fast delivery times, and so on. In order to make sure that we can offer those kind of values to our customers, we have to create the entire supply chain around it and make sure that the supply chains do have the capabilities to offer these values to the customers. So you learn that if we want to be a responsive supply chain, we have to work with a lot of uncertainty. And therefore, to manage this uncertainty, we might have some levers using excess capacity, excess inventory, or working with time to make sure that our delivery or the lead time or when we are developing a new product, time to the market is low. And also we are sharing all the information, coordinate with other pieces of the supply chain, and also we work with price. Differentiation to make sure that our services stay competitive and we can be responsible for all the values we are creating for the customers. So in this chapter, we're going to cover more on drivers of the supply chain, which helps us to actually manage the uncertainty. So you learned about capacity. Excess capacity can be very helpful in managing fluctuations in demand. So the capacity directly relates to facilities. So facilities such as assembly sites, manufacturing sites, warehouses, retail stores, and so on. And we talked about inventory. We can keep excess inventory, buffer inventory. So inventory is another driver of a successful supply chain. We talked about basically time. So time of delivery. So transportation modes affect time of delivery. If we want to use vessels, ships, vessels, it's going to take a lot of time to deliver. If you are using airplanes, for example, and air transportation, it will be faster. And then information, share of information really is important. Information technology comes in very handy in these cases. And then we talked about price, differentiation in price so that we can attract different customer bases and make sure that we offer basically products and services based on customer needs. Here we are adding one more, which is sourcing. Sourcing means that we decide if we want to do the operations in-house or outsource them. For example, transportation. There are so many transportation companies that offer these services to businesses. For example, FedEx, UPS, they do heavy, they have heavy services in terms of moving goods around. For example, Amazon has its own vans and airplanes for shipping goods around, but also they use FedEx as well. So they do have some outsourcing, but they also keep some work in-house as well. So that's why sourcing going to affect the entire supply chain design and operations, and we are considering it in this chapter. So let's take a look at an example here. IKEA. Obviously, IKEA is more on cost efficient side of things. So they're trying to offer low prices, acceptable quality, to some extent variety, but not that much. And they do not allow customization or personalization, obviously. So in terms of the drivers that they use, obviously they use inventory. They try to have modular design of furniture and other home goods. The components are unassembled, so it is much more easier for them to find space in their warehouses and retail stores to store all these. And it reduces the cost of inventory for them. So compare this with a customizable furniture store where they have all the assembled items and they need a larger space to keep assembled item in the store. And then facilities. So what IKEA does, they have large facilities, basically warehouse and retail stores are the same, so that they can actually keep a lot of inventory in there and keep products available for the customers. Reduce the cost of facilities because of these basically uh, to some extent instead of having a lot of facilities, small, they have large facilities and they achieve economies of scale because of the large sizes. And then in terms of transportation, since furnitures are unassembled, so it's much less costly to ship them. So they can pack the entire truck with more stuff and reduce the cost of transportation. On the other hand, you can consider other, for example, US furniture makers such as Ashley or Living Spaces. They not necessarily do have the same supply chain strategy as IKEA has. So they usually have need more space for their inventory and the cost of transportation is higher because most of the time they deliver larger pieces, less assembly needed. So let's take a look at these six drivers of any successful supply chain one more time in terms of being, specifically in terms of being responsive. So facilities are all physical locations that exist in the entire supply chain, assembly sites, manufacturers, warehouses, and so on. So inventory includes all raw material inventory to build a product, all finished goods, finished products ready to be sold to the customers, and also in between, work in process. The work in process means that the products that are not completed yet in terms of assembly. So there are pieces not completed yet, like IKEA moves pieces around. It's not the entire product, but rather work in process. But it still is inventory. They have to keep it somewhere and then move and ship it to other locations. And then transportation can be any kind of transportation inside the supply chain. It can be transporting raw material from suppliers to the manufacturers. It can be transporting finished goods to the warehouses or distribution centers, and it can be even moving those final products or work in process to basically retail stores as well as to final customers. And then information share, any share of data, any share of information about all these operations that are happening, about the facility operations, inventory levels, transportation modes and timings and cost and all the other information that flows through entire supply chain. And then we have sourcing, decision about which operation will be in-house, which operation will be outsourced. These days, tech companies in Silicon Valley usually do design and development in-house, and manufacturings are outsourced. And transportation, most of the time, is outsourced. Even it happens that inventory management and warehousing operations are outsourced. So there are so many decisions involved when it's a good time to do the work in-house, when it's a good time to outsource it, and we're going to talk about it. And then pricing. So obviously, every single service and product has a price, and the question is, are we going to decide about it? Are we keeping the price constant, basically all over the time, for all kind of customers, or we are changing it and basically trying to make many different groups of customers happy? So let's dive deeper into each of these. In terms of facilities, obviously facilities do have high impact on the entire supply chain because depending on the number of facilities we have, such as manufacturing centers, such as warehouses, their flexibility in terms of production, in terms of their even their capacity, will affect the supply chains directly. So when we talk about supply chains, usually we have these days global supply chains. Basically, there are so many players in the global supply chains. It's not just inside United States, it's units of the supply chains working all together all around the world. These days, manufacturing is happening in Asian countries, usually for many products, and their suppliers are coming from many different locations. And then we have the distribution all around the world and warehouses all around the world and so on and so forth. So the location of these facilities are going to affect the entire cost of the supply chain, being responsive, and so on. So if we have more facilities, for example, if we have more number of warehouses, then we can be closer to the customers, then we can be more responsive. For example, Amazon added a lot of warehouses in 2015 so that they can be closer to the customers and offer that 2 days or 1 day shipment opportunities. But when we have more facilities, it means that the cost will be higher. So the cost of maintaining the facility, operations within the facilities, human resources for the facility, equipment, machineries for the facilities, as well as the inventory cost will be higher. But also when we have more facilities, we can be more flexible in terms of time of production, in terms of space and capacity for the inventory and so on. So increasing the number of facilities helps us to increase flexibility and being more responsive, although it's going to cost us more money. So Toyota and Honda, they both utilize their facilities in order to offer better services to their customers. So both of them are actually more responsive to their customers. And Toyota, for example, increased its excess capacity at their manufacturing centers so that they can meet demand effectively. So when demand fluctuates, then they have actually extra capacity and flexible capacity to go for increasing the manufacturing. Honda approach is a little bit different. During the 2008 crisis, people started to more purchase sedan cars rather than SUVs. What Honda did, they created flexibility in their assembly line so that they could use the same assembly line for sedan cars and SUV. So basically, they could keep SUV production based on upcoming demand, but also dedicate more of their capacity and flexibility to the sedan cars. Other car manufacturers had to shut down the entire SUV lines because the demand was really low for them. So basically, working with facilities and their capacity and flexibility can help us to manage the uncertainty in demand in a more effective way. So the important aspect of facilities, again, one more time, is their capability. So their capability in terms of being flexible or being dedicated. Usually, um, companies that do have a solid base of customers have a dedicated facility for their manufacturers and for their warehouses because they know there is a solid number of customers and purchases and demand points, usually continues to be the same. So they usually go for, offering those products for their customers. But also they keep a few of their facilities to be flexible because again, if anything changes, if competitors are doing something new, if there are some new trends, if customers, the economies maybe are like crashing and there's some changes in demand, then they are a little bit more flexible of what they can do. On the other hand, there might be also facilities that are product focused or functional focused. A product focused facility means that the facility can actually work around every single operation about that product. And if we want to design a totally new product, we have to create a new production line. But a functional facility is for the purpose of being able to produce variety of products. For example, let's consider bottle of water. So when you purchase water, you should know that their manufacturing centers are product focused. This is the only product they're doing. That's it. And the shape, the scale, everything is the same. So they focus on the product and do the entire operations in one single facility or multiple facilities, but the same. But for functional facilities, we can to consider car manufacturing. So there are many different models and with different actually components and different features. So basically, it is a function based. So every single car that needs uh, to be colored into green, we're gonna go through the same station. Basically, it doesn't matter the car model, it doesn't matter the other features. If the color is green, then everyone gonna go through the same station. It is functional focus rather than product focus. And then the location of facilities, obviously, we can have centralized facilities, meaning that instead of having so many warehouses, we can have just a few, but very large and centralized. For example, if you look at FedEx, they have a centralized hub in Tennessee. So usually if you purchase something from online stores, you see that it's going through Tennessee and coming to California. The reason is that FedEx has a hub, a center, a centralized hub in Tennessee. On the other hand, some companies might decide to decentralize and get closer to the customers. For example, Amazon decentralized their warehouses. Now they built warehouses close to customers and be able to offer that 2-day, 1-day shipping. And basically, they know Amazon knows what you're going to purchase next before you knowing it. And they try to ship those products close to you in a warehouse so that when you decide to purchase them, they are close to you and you can get them very fast. They are doing all this using data analytics and these days with all those AI and machine learning techniques. So, in terms of capacity, warehouses can have a flexible capacity. For example, they can keep a large excess capacity so that if suddenly demand goes up, they can use the capacity for more manufacturing. Usually, companies who offer products, specific products during New Year's Eve or like Christmas, they do keep this excess capacity because then they can work with that excess huge demand. Um, but obviously, it's gonna come with a cost. And then demand allocation. Usually facilities do so basically in terms of managing the facilities, businesses do allocate demand fulfillment to facilities. So for example, it might happen to you that you purchase something online, for example, let's say from Macy's or other similar retail stores, assuming that there's so many Macy's stores around you, and maybe they should ship that product from somewhere close by to your house. They usually don't do that because they allocated your region to a specific warehouse or Macy's store, and whenever demand comes from that region, gonna go to that allocated facility. So not necessarily the closest are the ones that are being allocated. They are being strategic in terms of keeping availability for the region from the local market, but also being able to fulfill the online demand as well. So let's move into inventory. Inventory is an important aspect of any supply chain. So there are some supply chains do not keep inventory. They are very lean. They are trying to lower the inventory, lower the waste. For example, Toyota is very famous for their lean production and lean supply chain. But there are many other businesses, supply chains that do keep inventory. And the reason why they're keeping inventory is because always there is a mismatch between supply and demand. We're talking about demand in future. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. So in order to make sure that we have enough, we produce more and keep them in the inventory, and later we will be able to fulfill that demand. So there are businesses who try to keep low amount of inventory because they might go out of trend. For example, fashion industry. So they cannot keep high volume of inventory because again, it can go out of trend, and therefore they have short um, life cycle, and they have to be very careful how much inventory they are keeping. But other examples, W Grainger example that we talked about before, the maintenance or repair pieces that they keep in the inventory, actually they can keep a lot in the inventory because those parts, maintenance parts or like repair parts, they are the same, never go out of trend, never go out of, not never, but it takes a lot of years for them to get out of usage. So that's why it's easy for them to keep a lot of inventory of these products and lower basically the cost of manufacturing because they can manufacture in large scale and reduce the cost of manufacturing by doing that. So in terms of inventory, there are some trade-offs. Obviously, it's good to keep inventory just in case if demand goes up, then we have enough to offer to the customers and we don't lose the sales. But also, there are some cost involved in the inventory. So if you are holding the inventory, the cost of space, insurance, and also the risk of not being able to sell the trendy items, and then they go into waste. Also, there are some capital money investment that goes into inventory. If we cannot sell it, we are losing that money. And also there are basically in terms of profit margin, again, if we cannot sell it, sell that inventory, there might be some discounts, promotions that we have to offer, and there are a lot of complexity around deciding about the pricing and so on and so forth. But again, keeping inventory can be beneficial. It can help us in terms of disruption. For example, in COVID disruption, businesses who kept excess inventory, were successful for some time, but some businesses didn't keep enough inventory. They were more lean. They couldn't keep up with COVID disruption. So again, depending on the strategy of the business, they should be deciding about the level of inventory. So we do have an example here, Amazon. Amazon is actually doing very good with their inventory. If they have bestsellers, they usually keep those items in most of their regional warehouses so that they are available for customers for fast shipping. There are some products that are not really selling well, so they don't really keep all those in those products in all the warehouses. They keep them in just lower inventory, in order to lower their inventory cost, they just keep them in specific locations. And then there are very slow products in terms of being purchased by the customers, low demand for those products, and usually they don't even keep it on their own warehouse. They work with third parties, and then basically they do the shipment. So basically, Amazon has different kind of strategies to make sure that it offers low cost, but also offers responsiveness using inventory as a metric. So I have some questions for you to test what you learned so far. Question one, a company opens 5 regional distribution centers instead of one central warehouse. What happens to facility cost and inventory cost, and why? So if we have more facilities, then what happens to the cost? Um, if we have less facilities, then what? So I want you to compare. And then Honda designs plants that can assemble both SUVs and sedans. Is this a flexible or dedicated facility strategy? And what is the trade-off Honda accepts by choosing this approach? So depending on the form of facility, then what are some maybe costs or benefits and trade-offs, and how do you think that works for Honda? And then question 3, why does W.W. Granger's high inventory strategy make sense for MRO products? Maintenance, repair, and operation products, but not for fast fashion like Zara. So I want you to compare these two in terms of inventory strategies. And then Amazon stocks bestsellers in many warehouses, but prints slowest movers on demand. Which inventory principles does this illustrate, and how does it balance responsiveness and efficiency, considering different strategies that Amazon has? So please pause the video, think about these questions, and then you can find the answers in the next slide.